Hi all, this is the last session of chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Till now, we have studied the structure of flower and pre-fertilization structures and events. Remember, topic sexual reproduction, there are three events: pre-fertilization events, fertilization and post-fertilization events. We introduced the chapter with explanation of a flower, which is a recap from last year, followed by pre-fertilization structures, namely andrecium and gynoecium, and the structure pollen grain representing male gametophyte, embryo sac representing female gametophyte. We understood in detail how exactly they are formed, how do they look like. Well, they are all microscopic, but we have studied them with the help of diagrams. We also understood gamete transfer. Under pre-fertilization, there are two topics: gametogenesis and gamete transfer. In the previous video, you have seen various kinds of pollination, self-pollination, cross-pollination, various terms under each type. Like under self-pollination, cleistogamy, chasmogamy, followed by gaetonogamy, xenogamy. We understood various adaptations of flowers, adaptation for wind pollination, insect pollination, hydrophily in Vallisneria. We also understood how do the plants avoid self-pollination and achieve outbreeding. We listed outbreeding devices. We also studied how to perform artificial hybridization. After all these pre-fertilization events, we will now move on to the topic fertilization. What is the definition? Union of sperm with the egg resulting in zygote is fertilization. In flowering plants, fertilization is called double fertilization because it involves union of two different sperms with two different cells of embryo sac. There will be two fertilization events, thus the name double fertilization. Let us recap from our memory the structure of pistil. The stalk pedicel, there is a vascular tissue, the one written in purple color is vascular tissue entering the ovule, we call it raphe, and that is the anatropous ovule. You can see the integuments, the nucellus. The one written in orange color represents embryo sac. This is located inside the ovary. Ovule is the future seed. Ovary is the future fruit. Ovary is connected to stigma through a stalk called style. We also know the functions. Stigma receives pollen grains. Style conducts the pollen tube from the stigma to the ovary, and the ovary after fertilization develops into fruit, ovule develops into seed. I told you about the importance of stigma. Stigma is receiving variety of pollen grains of the same plant, a different plant of the same species, or maybe a different species. The responsibility of stigma is to now identify, screen, find out the right type of pollen grain and give chance only to the eligible pollen grain to germinate, not all the pollen grains. There will be secretion of chemicals like sucrose, boric acid, only they favor the growth of pollen tube. At specific region only, sucrose is secreted so that only certain pollen grains are given chance and many pollen grains are rejected. They are never given a chance to germinate. When the pollen grain is favored, when it is given a chance to germinate, remember there will be openings in the egg sign called germ pore. Through the germ pore, the intine extends out. You call it pollen tube. The pollen grain carries two male gametes or sperms. They are carried through the pollen tube. the pollen tube is growing through the style, it will reach the ovary and then enter into the ovule. As the pollen tube grows, the sperms are made to restrict to the tip of the pollen tube due to formation of something called callose plug. Callose plug, it blocks the sperms from entering back the pollen grain. They restrict it to the tip. The more longer the tube grows, more callose plugs are produced. So, sperms are restricted to the tip of the pollen tube. The pollen tube, probably through hormonal signal, identifies the micropyle, will enter the micropyle and penetrate into one of the synergids. Synergid cell is specialized with folds of membrane called filiform apparatus. Filiform apparatus facilitate entry of pollen tube. Well, you know that there are two synergids. One of them is facilitating the entry of pollen tube. The moment pollen tube enters the synergid cell, the tip breaks open and release the sperms. Later, the synergid cell also breaks open and the sperms are released into the central cell. As you can see here, there are two sperms and both the sperms are involved in fertilization. The one written in white color indicate sperm. The sperm fuse with the egg and result in zygote. I have written the summary here. The sperm fuse with the egg and result in zygote. The process is called syngamy. Sperm is haploid, egg is haploid, and the fusion product is diploid. Zygote is the first cell of next generation. You can see one more sperm here. The tube carried two sperms. One sperm has fused with the egg. The second sperm fused with the secondary nucleus of central cell. So, this is a central cell. Secondary nucleus of central cell is already diploid. The sperm fused with the secondary nucleus of central cell. The chromosome number will be now n plus 2n, thus it is 3n. So, sperm and the central cell undergo fusion and produce a cell called PEC, primary endosperm cell, and this cell undergoes repeated mitosis and give rise to endosperm tissue. Obviously, endosperm tissue is also triploid. So, this triploid tissue will now provide nourishment to the developing embryo. Sperm plus central cell produce a cell called PEC. On mitosis, it produces a tissue called endosperm tissue, and that provides nutrition to the zygote. The zygote develops into embryo. Hope now we have got the point why it's called double fertilization. Because there are two fertilization processes involved, we call it double fertilization. One of the sperms fused with the egg produce zygote. Another sperm fused with the secondary nucleus of central cell produce primary endosperm cell. Out of these two events, formation of primary endosperm cell is very important. Without this, zygote is unable to develop into embryo. There will be a lack of nutrition. Endosperm cell should first divide and produce endosperm tissue. So, formation of endosperm precedes embryo development, and once sufficient nutrition is available, zygote starts dividing and produce embryo. This is a long answer question. If I ask you a question on explain events during double fertilization, you will choose this diagram, write this summary and explain the two events, formation of zygote and formation of endosperm tissue. Sexual reproduction involving three events. We completed pre-fertilization events, double fertilization. We are now moving on to the next topic, post-fertilization structures and events. Now consider a transformation of a flower into fruit. What structures we saw in a flower, what they will become now after pollination and fertilization. You know that the accessory orals, the calyx and corolla, they wither away. Stamen, after giving away the pollen grains, they wither away. Style and the stigma of pistil again wither away. What we are left with is ovary. The ovary grows to form the fruit and the ovule grows to form the seed. The ovule encloses embryo sac. The embryo sac is 7-celled. What about those 7 cells? We discussed only 2 cells in the previous frame, about the zygote, about endosperm cell. So what about the other cells? These are the antipodal cells. They have already degenerated. Synergids, one of them facilitated growth of pollen tube. The other synergid will degenerate. There is no more function of that. Embryo sac is now left with just 2 cells. One is primary endosperm cell with a triploid nucleus. Another one is zygote. These are the 2 products of double fertilization. After fertilization, what happens? I said formation of endosperm is the first event. This cell, the PEC, primary endosperm cell, undergoes repeated mitosis and produce a tissue called endosperm tissue. In some cases, like in coconut, there will be nuclear division not followed by cytoplasmic division. So, it will be a bunch of nuclei suspended in a liquid medium, which we use it as tender coconut. Now, ಕುಡಿಯುವಂಥ ಎಳನೀರು ಅದು ಎಂಡೋಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಟಿಶ್ಯೂ. ಆ ಎಳನೀರಿನೇ ಮುಂದೆ ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಗಂಜಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ತೆಂಗಿನಕಾಯಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕೊಬ್ಬರಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ತೆಂಗಿನಕಾಯಿ, ಕೊಬ್ಬರಿ, ಗಂಜಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೂಡ ಎಂಡೋಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಟಿಶ್ಯೂನೇ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. So this formation of endosperm is various in various species. In coconut it's a liquid endosperm, in some cases it is a solid endosperm, so it's variable. Once the endosperm tissue is formed, it will provide nutrition to the developing zygote. So the food should come here, it is processed here, given to the zygote so that the zygote can now become the embryo. This is another post fertilization event. This series of diagrams can help you answer a long answer question. Explain the stages of embryo development. For that, you will use these diagrams. The sequence is very easy to follow. Just follow the alphabetical order: G, H, M. Globular embryo, heart-shaped embryo, mature embryo. In chapter 1, we discussed formation of embryo requires 2 events. One is cell division, the other one is cell differentiation. This is a cell which has to undergo division. Division should be accompanied by differentiation. Zygote cell, so what are these letters? M and C. M refers to micropyle, C refers to chalaza. I am showing you the orientation of the zygote. Zygote undergoes horizontal division, results in 2-celled structure. The cell towards micropyle remains the same, it does not divide any further, whereas the cell towards chalaza undergoes a series of horizontal divisions resulting in thread-like structure. And this thread-like structure, we call it suspensor. Suspensor, it has a job of pushing the embryo deep into endosperm tissue. The more longer the suspensor, more deeper the embryo gets located, thus it can be better nourished. The job of suspensor is to push the embryo deep into endosperm tissue. Now, based on the shape, you have given different names here. This is spherical in nature, a group of cells more spherical in nature, globular embryo. After some time, it gets differentiated, more cell divisions followed by differentiation. If you see it reverse, it appears like heart, so the name heart shaped embryo. The cotyledons further expand, and finally you can see two special leaves called cotyledons which hold the food, and they hold a shoot tip here, that's called plumule. The opposite end you find radicle. Now this is called mature embryo. Thus zygote gives rise to embryo. Obviously the size increases, and to accommodate embryo the ovule has to expand, it grows, and thus you call it seed. And to accommodate a seed, the ovary has to expand, and thus it becomes a fruit. This is how post fertilization changes take place. Now if you compare embryo of two major groups of flowering plants, the dicots and monocots, this is a dicot embryo. You can consider anything like bean seed or any member of Fabaceae, any dicot family also you can consider. You can observe there are two cotyledons. They are the special leaves which hold the food. They help seed establish into plant. They provide food for the germinating seed. So all those sprout seeds that you have used, ಮೊಳಕೆ ಕಾಳು ನಾವೇನು ತಿಂತೀವಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಬೇಳೆಗಳನ್ನು ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಆ ಬೇಳೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕಾಟಿಲಿಡನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಆ ಬೇಬಿ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಬಿಳಿ ಬಣ್ಣದ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದೇ ರ್ಯಾಡಿಕಲ್, ದ ಫ್ಯೂಚರ್ ರೂಟ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್. ಆ ಮೊಳಕೆ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅದು ರ್ಯಾಡಿಕಲ್. You can see the radicle here. This will form the future root system. It is protected by a root cap. Opposite to radicle is plumule. Plumule is the future shoot system. So ಇದು ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, ಬೇರಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇದು ಮಣ್ಣಿನ ಮೇಲೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಕಾಂಡ ಎಲೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. That is how an embryo established into a plant. A monocot has a little different plan. A monocot is more evolved. It has reduced some parts, enlarged some parts. Compare a dicot embryo with a monocot embryo, you find only one large cotyledon. In dicots there are two cotyledons. In monocot there is only one large cotyledon, and that is called scutellum. Scutellum is the cotyledon of monocot embryo. So what about the other cotyledon? The other cotyledon is reduced, and it is called by the name epiblast. Epiblast is a reduced cotyledon. This is the shoot tip, plumule. The future shoot comes from this. The opposite end is radicle. It forms the future root system. Radicle is protected by root cap, just like dicot embryo. Radicle is protected by root cap. Interestingly, in monocots, there are additional coverings to the embryonal tips. Plumule is protected by an additional covering called coleoptile. Remember last year, chapter 15, we discussed about Darwin's experiments, growth regulators. The coleoptile tip bends towards the source of light. This is the one we refer to. Coleoptile is actually the first leaf. It is protective in nature, protects the plumule. So when you put a monocot seed into soil, what comes out is a coleoptile. ದವಸ ಧಾನ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಮೊಳಕೆ ಹಾಕಿದಾಗ ಭೂಮಿಯಿಂದ ಆಚೆಗೆ ಬರುವಂಥ ಆ ಒಂದು ಪೈರು ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನು coleoptile ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. Opposite end, the radicle is covered by a cap-like structure. We call it coleorhiza. Coleorhiza. Coleoptile protects the shoot tip. Coleorhiza protects the root tip. So these are the structures, the dicot embryo and the monocot embryo. You can expect this for short answer questions. So we are in the topic post-fertilization structures and events. We understood endosperm, embryo, and the topic embryo we understood events in embryo development, and we compared structure of dicot embryo with monocot embryo. In the topic post fertilization events, we covered two subtopics, endosperm and embryo. We are now moving on to the next topic, seed. Seed, as you know, is a mature ovule. The seeds are classified into two types based on whether they contain endosperm at maturity or not. If a seed contains endosperm at maturity, we call it albuminous seed. For example, again this is a topic from last year, we studied the structure of maize grain. You know that maize grain is technically a fruit, it is not a seed. It is this layer, the aleurone layer, is representing fruit wall plus seed coat. The two layers have fused inseparably. So, technically maize grain is a fruit. It is a fruit called Caryopsis. In this fruit, the major content of the fruit is endosperm tissue. So, maize grain, the nutrition that we get is from the endosperm. And this miniature thing is the embryo, which I explained in the previous frame. You remember coleoptile, plumule, radicle, coleorhiza, and that is scutellum, epiblast. This I have written in the previous diagram. So, this grain or any monocot grain, we call it albuminous seed because they hold endosperm even at maturity. When the seed germinates to form plant, the endosperm provides nutrition. Another category of seeds, we call them non-albuminous or ex-albuminous seeds, where the seed does not possess endosperm at maturity. Endosperm is used up. The food is mostly stored in cotyledons. You can see two cotyledons, they hold the food, that is the plumule, the radicle, dicot embryo. So, seeds can be of two types, albuminous and non-albuminous seeds. Sometimes in the ovule, the nucellar tissue is left over, it is left unutilized. If the nucellar tissue is left over, the tissue is called perisperm. Perisperm. This is different from endosperm. Endosperm is a triploid tissue, whereas perisperm is a sporophytic tissue. It is a diploid tissue. Leftover nucellus is called perisperm. This is noticed in some plants like sugar beet, pepper, etc. These are the exclusive examples we need to know when we answer for NEET questions. So, they cover such topics and ask you questions. So, you should be aware of those special cases. Another term we mention here is about dormancy. What is dormancy? Dormancy refers to arrested stage of an embryo or seed. When a seed, even after providing the facility, fails to germinate, we call it a dormant seed. The seed is subjected to some amount of rest. The seed will go to sleep. Even if you sow it, you put it in the soil, you provide the best environment possible, it will not germinate, it will take time. It is designed to sleep because in the nature, the plant knows which season is favorable, which season is not favorable. It will time the seed in such a way that it is made to germinate only in the favorable season. That is how they are made to undergo dormancy, arrested stage of seed. The next topic, pericarp. What is pericarp? Last year we studied this. Pericarp is the fruit wall. Let me take an example, say the mango fruit. This is a season, maybe you are not getting enough mangoes of course to eat because of corona effect. Well, this fruit, you have three layers. The outer skin, epicarp, the middle fleshy part, mesocarp, which is edible, and the inner shell, the endocarp. These are the three wall layers of the fruit. They together constitute pericarp. And within this exists the seed. ನೀವೇನನ್ನ ಸಿಪ್ಪೆ ಅಂತ ಎಸಿತೀರಾ ಅದು ಎಪಿಕಾರ್ಪ್. ನೀವು ತಿನ್ನುವಂಥ ಹಣ್ಣು ಮೀಸೋಕಾರ್ಪ್. ವಾಟೆ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಎಸಿತೀರಾ ಅದು ಎಂಡೋಕಾರ್ಪ್. ಅದರೊಳಗಡೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಸೀಡ್. Mango fruit technically is called drupe fruit. Remember last year we studied drupe, example mango, example coconut. So both the cases the endocarp is the hardest, that's why it is categorized as drupe fruit. Now we can examine number of many other fruits and try to understand what is pericarp. In some cases the fruits are called false fruits. So what is the difference between true fruit and false fruit? When the ovary develops into fruit wall, you call it true fruit. If some part of the flower other than the ovary contributes for fruit formation, we call it false fruit. When some part of the flower other than the ovary contributes for fruit formation, we call it false fruit. We have two examples here. One is apple. Technically it is called pome. In case of pome, you can notice the seeds are attached to placenta, and this part is the ovary. The ripened ovary is this part. Technically this is a fruit. And this thing, what we actually eat, is thalamus. Thalamus has covered the ovary and has become edible. Because thalamus contributes to fruit formation, we call it a false fruit. Pome is a technical name. Similarly, in case of strawberry, it is the fleshy thalamus which is edible. The actual fruits are very much restricted to the surface. The major bulk of the fruit is made up of thalamus tissue. It's technically called achene. Achene of strawberry is also a false fruit. Some fruits are called parthenocarpic fruits. Banana is a parthenocarpic fruit, naturally parthenocarpic. Fruits which do not contain seed are called parthenocarpic. So there will be pollination. For some reason there is no fertilization. Ovule is unable to develop into seed, but ovary wall develops into fruit. Such fruits are called parthenocarpic. So these fruits are very favorite for us because there is no hassle of throwing the seed out, just enjoy eating the fruit. So banana is one such example. And we create parthenocarpic grapes by spraying hormones like auxins and gibberellins, where the seed is not allowed to develop, only the fruit wall develops. So it's easy to consume. Nowadays we have made papaya parthenocarpic, seedless fruit. So any seedless fruit is parthenocarpic. It is either created by the nature or we create it artificially. The topic seed continues. Why do the plants produce seed? Because when you study various groups of plants like algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, they don't produce seed. They are lower groups of plants. Only the gymnosperms and angiosperms produce seed. So what way it is evolutionarily advantageous? Seed has several advantages. Formation of seed is independent of necessity of water. Pollination and fertilization does not require water. That way, these plants can establish on terrestrial habitat very easily. They don't need medium of water to achieve pollination or fertilization. Seeds are easy to disperse. They are very compact. Some of them carry bunch of hairs or wings. Thus they travel a long distance and reach faraway places. This helps the species to establish in different areas. Seeds, they carry a lot of food reserve. When the seed germinates, this food will be utilized in establishment of the plant. That's the greatest advantage. The seed has seed coat. I mentioned about testa and tegmen. These are the two integuments which form the testa and tegmen. In case of support, I have seen the seed coat, how hard it is. Think of guava seeds. ಸೀಬೆಕಾಯಿಲಿರೋ ಬೀಜ ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೀತಾಫಲ ಅದರ ಬೀಜಗಳು ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. That seed coat offers protection against environmental hazards or any physical damage. Thus, the embryo is safe inside. And seed is a product of sexual reproduction, and when the gametes are produced from two different plants, obviously the young one born will be with variations. Variations lead to evolution. There is an evolutionary advantage of the seed. This may appear as a short note question. What are the advantages of seed? So these are the advantages you need to list. You can pause the video and note down those points. It's also available in the text. You can read it. There are some special seeds which we have to mention here. Seeds of a plant called Lupinus arcticus was found buried in the Arctic region. They recovered it, and radiocarbon dating revealed that the seed is something like 10,000 years old. And when the seeds were sown in the soil, interestingly, they germinated. The seed waited for 10,000 years for the favorable season or favorable environment and finally could germinate. See the beauty of seed. It can remain dormant for 10,000 years. That's something really great. Similarly, date palm, Kharjura, Phoenix dactylifera antivalla adu. Date palm, they recovered a seed, and on testing they found that it is some 2,000 years old. It was recovered from King Herod's palace near Dead Sea. And the seed, when put into soil, it germinated. It has now given rise to plant. So seeds can last for a very long time. Even many lotus seeds are known for such long dormancy period. So it's the greatest advantage of seed. In some plants, a fruit will contain many seeds. In fact, thousands. They are dust-like, powdery seeds are produced. Plants like orchids prefer producing many seeds. Parasitic plants like Orobanche, Striga, they produce dust-like seeds. Even ficus ಗೊತ್ತಲ್ವಾ, ಅಂಜೂರ, ಆಲದ ಮರ, ಅತ್ತಿ ಮರ, ಅರಳಿ ಮರ, ಅಂಜೂರ, ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಫೈಕಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಜೀನಸ್ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ಅಂಜೂರದ ಹಣ್ಣನ್ನು ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅದರೊಳಗಡೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸೀಡ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ, ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಸೀಡ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಒಂದು ಫ್ರೂಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿ? ಹಂಡ್ರೆಡ್ಸ್. ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ, ಪ್ರತಿ ಸೀಡ್ಗೂ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ, ಗಿಡ ಆಗುವಂಥ ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ, ಒಂದು ಫ್ರೂಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಸೀಡ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಒಂದು ಮರದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಫ್ರೂಟ್ಸ್ ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದು ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಮರಗಳಿವೆ. ವಿದಿನ್ ನೋ ಟೈಮ್ ದೇ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ದ ವೆಜಿಟೇಷನ್. ಸೊ ಎವ್ರಿ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ waits for a chance. If given, yes, it will establish within short period of time. That is the potential of seeds. This covers the topic post fertilization events. We are moving on to the last topic of this chapter, 2.5, apomixis and polyembryony. Let me give you a comparison. What if the teacher has not come on a particular day? We are so free. ನಮ್ಮ ಟೀಚರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಗೆ ಬರದೇ ಇದ್ದರೆ ನಾವು ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಪಕ್ಕದ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಟೀಚರ್ ಬಂದು ಬೈತಾರೆ, ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೆಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟೇಟಿವ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ. ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ನಗ್ತೀರಾ, ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೆಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟೇಟಿವ್ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ ಇವತ್ತು ಅಂತ. ಆಗ ಟೀಚರ್ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಇವತ್ತು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ ಮಾಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಎದ್ದು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ. Many of you will get up, you have got a chance to become a class representative. The teacher will assign a few of you to take care of the class so that the class can remain silent, do some work, do some activity. ಒಬ್ಬ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಟೀಚರ್ ಅಥವಾ ಸಿ ಆರ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಹೇಗೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಜನ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೋ, ಆ ಥರ ಒಂದು ಓವ್ಯೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯೋ ಸ್ಯಾಕ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಓವ್ಯೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯೋ ಸ್ಯಾಕ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯೋ ಸ್ಯಾಕ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಗ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಎಗ್ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಝೈಗೋಟ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ವಾಟ್ ಇಫ್ the embryo sac is not produced inside a ovule. Now many cells, they volunteer, they try to become the zygote. So that mechanism we call it apomixis. In an ovule, in the absence of embryo sac, the cells of nucellus, cells of integument become embryo. This mechanism is apomixis. The seed is produced, seed enclosed in embryo, but interestingly, the embryo is not a product of fertilization. It is just the ordinary diploid cell of the nucellus or integument developing into embryo. This is more like parthenogenesis, development of seed without fertilization. What is the advantage? It's very good, because the seed, when you germinate in the soil, it will give rise to a plant which is exactly like the mother plant. So if the mother plant is superior, the young one born is equally superior. Our farmers have to spend a lot of money buying hybrid seeds, because hybrid seeds are difficult to produce. It involves a lot of manpower, so the seeds are costly. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲೇ ಬೆಳೆ ಬೆಳಿಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ 1 kg ಸೀಡ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀರ ಅಂತ ಜ್ಞಾಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. 100 ಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಟೊಮ್ಯಾಟೊ ಸೀಡ್ ತರಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ? 1 kg ಕಲ್ಲಂಗಡಿ ಹಣ್ಣಿನ ಸೀಡ್ ತರಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ? 1000 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀರ. ಆ ಹೈಬ್ರಿಡ್ ಸೀಡನ್ನು ಒಬ್ಬ ಸೈಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್ ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟು ತಯಾರಿಸ್ತಾನೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬ ಬೆಲೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸಪೋಸ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಬೈಪಾಸ್ ದಿಸ್, ನಂಗೆ ಹೈಬ್ರಿಡ್ ಸೀಡ್ ಬೇಡ ಸರ್, ನನಗೆ ಮದರ್ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಟ್ ಥರನೇ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೋ ಥರ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತಂದರೆ, here is a possibility. If you identify the gene responsible for apomixis and insert this into crop plants, the seeds will be true to their mother. The seeds give rise to the plant just like the mother plant. It will be like one more vegetative propagation. This also has one more advantage. Because many cells in the nucellus and integument participate in embryo formation, a single seed will have many embryos. Occurrence of many embryos in one seed, we call it polyembryony. Presence of many embryos in a seed. So one seed, many embryos. You put one seed, you get many plants. We notice this in plants like citrus. Sometimes it is also noticed in mango, even apple. Citrus is the most commonly referred example. So occurrence of more than one embryo in a seed is polyembryony. Even this has an advantage. You can raise many plants by using limited number of seeds. That is the concluding topic of chapter sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Well, this is the concept map for chapter sexual reproduction in flowering plants. It's big, but it has all the details summarized in one chart. I told you topic sexual reproduction involves 3 events: pre-fertilization, fertilization and post-fertilization events. In total, we studied 5 topics in this chapter. Topic number 1, structure of flower. Topic 2, pre-fertilization, structures and events. Topic 3, double fertilization. Topic 4, post-fertilization events. And topic 5, apomixis and polyembryony, a special case noticed in some of the crop plants. Now, if we recall from a memory, last year we studied life cycle of angiosperms. We understood that angiosperms, like gymnosperms, exhibit diplontic life cycle, which means the dominant stage is diploid stage, the sporophytic stage. The very plant that you see, the vegetable that you eat, the fruit that you enjoy, they are all sporophytic structures. The root, stem, leaf, what you notice is sporophyte. The sporophyte alternates with gametophyte, which is microscopic. Pollen grain is a microscopic structure. Embryo sac is hidden inside the ovule. A few cell structure represents gametophytic stage. Because the dominant stage is diploid stage, the life cycle is called diplontic life cycle. The same is represented here in this chart. Let us go one by one. The plant life cycle starts with this, the plant body. The plant body is diploid in nature. It has roots, stem and leaves. During reproduction, it produces a cluster of flowers. We call it inflorescence. You know that inflorescence can be of two types, racemose and cymose. Inflorescence is made up of flower. Flower is a modified shoot. Flower has two types of orals, accessory or non-essential and essential orals. Accessory orals are calyx and corolla. Calyx is made up of sepals, green in color, protective in function. Corolla, brightly colored, attractive in function. Essential orals are androecium and gynoecium. Androecium is made up of units called stamen. They are technically called microsporophylls. The anther part of the microsporophyll holds 4 microsporangia. Microsporangia has wall layers, namely epidermis, endothecium, middle layer and tapetum. And within the microsporangium you find microspore mother cells. In case of female part, the gynoecium, also called pistil, it's made up of units called carpels. Technically, carpel is a megasporophyll. In a sectional view, you can see gynoecium has stigma, style and ovary. Stigma receives pollen grains. Style conducts pollen tube. Ovary is the future fruit. Ovary enclose ovule. They are attached to a nutritive tissue called placenta. Ovule is technically called megasporangium. Megasporangium enclose megaspore mother cell. Till here, it represents a diploid stage. The microspore mother cell within microsporangium and megaspore mother cell within megasporangium undergo meiosis or reduction division that ends the sporophytic stage and begins the gametophytic stage. Each microspore mother cell gives rise to 4 microspores. Each microspore develops into a pollen grain. Pollen grain is 3-celled, 1 tube cell or vegetative cell and 2 male gametes. The pollen grain is shed, it travels in the air or carried by the insect or bird or human beings. They reach the stigma of the flower. The process is called pollination. We studied various terms under pollination. On the female side, the megaspore mother cell undergoes reduction division, produce 4 megaspores, 3 die, 1 survives. Surviving megaspore undergoes mitotic division and produce 7-celled embryo sac, also called female gametophyte. Polygonum type of embryo sac we studied. Embryo sac consists of 3 cells making egg apparatus, 1 diploid cell called central cell. It's a product of fusion of 2 polar nuclei, and 3 cells called antipodals. Antipodals degenerate, they don't have any specific function. Among 3 cells of egg apparatus, 2 cells, you call them synergids. They have special folded membrane called filiform apparatus. One of these synergids facilitate entry of pollen tube. Later they die. The egg cell will now undergo union with the sperm and result in zygote. This is one fertilization. The central cell, which is already diploid, undergo fusion with another sperm of the pollen grain and produce primary endosperm cell. That is a second fertilization. Because there are 2 fertilization processes, we call it double fertilization. This was studied by scientists like Navashin and Gignard. Double fertilization involves triple fusion. Observe, this is a product of fusion of 2 polar nuclei. This is first fusion. Egg and sperm fuse, that is second fusion. Another sperm fuse with the central cell and produce primary endosperm cell, that is a third fusion. So, double fertilization also involves triple fusion. What is the fate of these cells? Zygote develops into embryo when nourished by endosperm tissue. Primary endosperm cell divides by mitosis and gives rise to endosperm tissue. This is again triploid, and this will provide food to the developing zygote, and finally it will either stay with the seed or it will dry away, but it will not be a part of the next generation. Its fate is to finally sacrifice, give all its food to the embryo and die. When fertilization takes place, the gametophyte generation ends. The sporophytic generation begins. So, zygote is the first cell of sporophytic generation, and gametophytic generation is represented by few-celled male gametophyte and female gametophyte. So, two events, meiosis and fertilization, alternates 2 generations, the sporophytic generation and the gametophytic generation.